my heart and soul.
Oh, that's so cool.
So, yes, tell me a little bit about you.
Oh my gosh, where to start? Like how far back? What?
Well, how'd you meet Molly? And we'll start there.
So Molly is a mom of one of the volleyball players that my daughter plays with. So they're on the same.
Okay.
Her daughter and my daughter are on the same volleyball team.
Okay.
And so we were at.
Do you live over on that side?
Nope.
Oh,
I live in Woodinville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she and I were just talking about our pasts, and she said, there's something I have to tell you that you need to do. You need to write your story down. I'm like, I know. Yeah, I've always wanted to, but just never. I've always been busy, There's always stuff going on. She's like, I need to tell you about somebody. And so that was really cool. It was really neat to me that she said, I know somebody you should talk to.
Well, and it's nice that she gifted you her gift certificate.
Oh, that was crazy.
In this past year, it's always about defining your market and what you really want, and it's a hard thing when you're doing it all on your own. Completely. So I've fluctuated from $197 special to $952. Now I'm pretty settled on $585 with people who really know me 30% off, and that's $410. But I'm preparing for Shark Tank, so that'll be a completely different thing because
Are you really?
I am.
Oh my
so that ideally I can get more cash inflow and survive the personal stories, because each personal story takes 40 to 50 hours.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I won't compromise.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Like, this feels like this should be the small version for how much.
Well, it's neither. It's neither here nor there. At this point, for the past 7.5 years, I've used my retirement, refinanced my home.
Oh, gosh.
I'm still married, thank goodness. But that's how important it is, because our personal stories are important.
Yeah.
And we don't have the time. And then people die.
Yeah, and they're gone.
Right. And once their voice is gone, it's hard to remember who they were.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I don't know. I've written over 50 books. I didn't want to do Shark Tank, but then something told me that I should, so that I could have a basic book out there, especially for memory care, that might help provide the influx I need for the other stuff. I mean, eventually I want to train people to do this, and then I can provide support and counseling. But
do you do it? Do you sometimes do these over the phone?
I do a lot over the phone.
That's so cool.
I do a lot over the phone. Some people on Zoom, but most people prefer over the phone.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like I had an article in the Farm Show magazine, which was circulation of 150 to 200,000 people, and these people are all over the country. None of them really use computers, so it's great. It's great.
Oh my gosh.
So typically, out of that, I got my own book to just help. The most important thing is, so they end up. So this is a book I usually give people to help them just kind of get in touch with their story. They end up looking like this: Rose's story, or I did this for my mother-in-law, where I asked everybody to tell me their stories, their memories.
About her. Oh my God.
Because she's just beginning to need more memory care, so she loves this. She reads it all the time. She's a devout Catholic. She goes, Beth, I feel like I don't deserve this. I feel like I'm sinning. I go, Mom, people would much rather tell you how they feel before you die. Yes. So
that is so neat.
So really the most important thing is you start. You can do, like my daughter, she's management, communication, and Boeing. She goes, Mom, this is really a lot of information. Do you think it should be presented that way? And I go, honey, I'd rather have them leaf through it and do nothing at all, or do everything, because some people like to write out their stories.
Yeah.
Others just want to talk to me, or they talk to me and then they say, okay, ask me questions.
Yeah.
Someone sent me 10 years worth of diaries, so.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's crazy.
But it's important because there's apps out there. There's an app, I think Molly likes the one where Storyworth, somebody sends a question a month.
Oh, neat.
Except it really doesn't get done. It's no different than any other email.
Yeah, completely.
Even with people purchasing the product, I have to remind them it's your time. Because what happens is people get excited, they get nervous, they don't think their story is worth it. And it's just too easy to ignore it.
Yeah.
You know, I tell everyone, you don't have to talk about the painful parts. If you want to talk about the painful parts, that's fine too. If you want to talk about them and leave them out of your book, that's fine too. It's the gestalt of storytelling and then knowing that it's in a book and you can let it go.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
Somebody posted on Facebook, it was from Carolyn Mace, who I actually met when I was in Chicago, but she's written a lot of books on spirituality, and you know, she pretty much says your biography becomes your biology, and your biology becomes your biography. And we know with the research with the genes, they keep evolving, and it's really about the stories you keep telling yourself over.
100%.
Yes.
I'm so with you on that.
Yeah. So
That's so cool.
that's me in a nutshell. You can either visit me in a nut home or no. I mean, I was an occupational therapist. I still am for many years, and then I was in pharmaceutical sales. And when they decided to make an excuse to fire me 8 years ago next week, my last one was going through college, and it's like, I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do, which is write. And I didn't know it would take on this curveball. I did all the media bistro courses my daughter told me to take, and then I realized the publishing industry was just fucked. Excuse my...
No, I believe it.
And I don't have energy. I mean, all these places, they aren't necessarily what they say they are, and people write, they don't necessarily make millions either, so let's cut to the chase. Let's get a book done in 3 months. You know, I ask people to donate their book on my website anonymously, first name, last name, just so that as I keep growing, people know that, kind of like Amazon Kindle, for 99 cents, they can donate to the management of the site and help extra stuff pay for the books, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not there yet. You know, it's really all about personal connection with people.
Yeah.
And they remember more of their memories, and I don't cut them off at the time period. It's like, okay, let's hear it.
Yeah.
You know, so I haven't heard any bad story.
I bet.
None.
I bet everybody's got an interesting one.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody has some amazing stories that I feel honored to even hear.
Right.
Because people have, it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Stuff, yeah. I'm sure. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
So how long have you been at Limeade?
So I helped start the company. It's been about over 13 years now.
Did you know Sharon Gillespie?
Yes.
She had been my boss. She hired me first when it was Cardinal, and she hired me because I wrote a thank you note, a personal thank you note, but she was married to her first husband at the time. And so we were Cardinal, and then Bar came along and bought Cardinal, and they didn't take Sharon along. And then I had other bosses, and she then went her own way. I think it's been Limeade, and then a place for Mother, and now back to Bosch and Lomb.
Is that where she is now?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I wonder where she was. I like her a lot. We used to sit really close to each other, right over here. Yeah. That's funny.
So it's a small world.
It is such a small world. Yeah, I definitely know Sharon. I've been to her house for like a Christmas party.
There you go.
Yeah.
Do you do crafts? I've lost touch with her for
I used to, and I haven't done much. She does a lot of crafts.
She was a craft person.
Oh, that's so cool.
I haven't really talked to her in a good 4 years,
Yeah.
but
It's probably been 3 years since I've talked to her.
Yeah.
Aw, that's funny.
small world.
Yeah. So I helped start the company. So that's kind of a
Huh.
fun story in and of itself.
Well,
I can do that. That one's easy. I talk about that one all the
right.
time. So I was at Microsoft. I had been at Microsoft over 9 years, and I had just decided it was time to go. And there were a whole bunch of kind of series of events that happened. A lot of personal stuff. I was having health issues. I found out that I had celiac disease and Hashimoto's disease, and also mostly the biggest thing was I just wasn't loving working there anymore. I just dreaded going there every day. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of the politics and the game playing and just stuff that I just didn't feel like I wanted to do, spend my life playing these games. And so I decided to leave and start my own consulting business. And so before I had even technically left, I met the guy who's the CEO of Limeade, he came to me and said, I just have this idea. I want to work on software that helps promote happiness. And I said, that's a great idea. In fact, I have studied things that are related to this. My background is that I'm an organizational psychologist. So I have a
wonderful.
PhD in organizational psychology. So basically thinking about psychology applied to work, right? And so he and I met and completely hit it off. And he's like, I want to hire you, but I don't have any money. I'm like, well, damn it, I have bills. And so I said, I'll do some projects with you, right? We can do some stuff together because I'm so interested in this topic. So I was starting my consulting business, getting people who could actually pay me to do work. And then at the same time.
And they were paying you for software development?
No. So my area of expertise is around employee research.
Okay.
So doing research with employees around things like employee engagement, organizational culture. How do you create a place where you want to come every day, right? And so I've done a lot of the research behind it. That's what I did at Microsoft. I headed up a team of organizational psychologists. So I had 10 organizational psychologists reporting to me there. Wow. And it was really cool on paper, but in practice, not so much. Right. So anyway, starting my consulting business I was gonna do a lot of the same things that I had done at Microsoft, but in a consulting capacity with other companies. But then I met Henry, and he's the guy who is the CEO, and we just hit it off on this topic of how could you actually create a place where people want to come to work every day, where people felt more joy and felt more sense of purpose. And so I convinced him that happiness, sadly, is probably not the thing we should focus on because it's so temporary. And the things that make us happy might not always be the best for us in the long term. Right? I mean, a glass of Chardonnay makes me really happy, but probably not the best for my well-being, right? And so we decided, I told him we should focus on well-being. And so I did a bunch of the research around, what well-being is, what it's related to, and that's what we created this company based on, is what the academic literature says about what well-being is. So it was very timely for both of us because in a lot of ways, that's what my problem was at Microsoft, is that I didn't feel a sense of purpose. I didn't feel like I had any joy in my life. I was physically ill. Mm-hmm. I had, my little boy who's saying stuff to me that was breaking my heart about. He said one time to me, he's 18 now, but he was like 6, and he said, why do you worry all the time? Just to have my tiny little boy see that in me. I'm like, that's not who I am. And so I was really going through like a well-being crisis when I was there, and burned out, really. That's what a lot of it was about. So anyway, Henry was going through the same kind of thing from the job he was at. So he and I completely hit it off. Mm-hmm. Had so much fun just from a pure intellectual perspective in kind of starting this company and getting it going. And so we created the kind of basis around trying to improve well-being in the world. And it was just an idea. And now we have crazy number of big companies that are our customers and 250 employees, and it's pretty awesome. And so I get to work on stuff every single day that has meaning, and has purpose.
And when did you start that?
So that was in 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, so 13 years. So so it's been kind of a trip. So my work part of my life has been awesome. Well, really, lots of parts of my life have been awesome. But the thing I was talking to Molly about was actually my childhood, which was really kind of, I feel like it's kind of unique.
Okay.
So that was the part that she was like, you need to write this down. So my parents were hippies in the whole sense of the word, right?
Okay.
My dad had a beard down to here, tie-dye shirts every day. We had a VW bus. And so they really wanted to go off the grid. So when I was in 4th grade, and there's a ton of details and stories in all of this, and I'll tell you the main one. When I was in 4th grade, they decided to move to North Carolina. And so we'd been in Michigan.
What part of Michigan?
So Livonia, like near Livonia.
Uh-huh.
Do you know Michigan?
Yeah. My girlfriend went to OT school in Michigan, and she lives in Livonia.
Oh, wow. That's funny. So, so I grew up when I was little there. Mm-hmm. We actually moved to Florida to get away from the winters. We moved to Florida when I was 5, kindergarten. And I had really serious allergies, so bad that I went deaf. So it ended up being a particular tree that was in our yard that we didn't know until a long time. So my allergies were so bad because of that tree. But so then my parents decided, well, what's halfway in? We want to be somewhere warmer. We don't want to be in Michigan. What's halfway between Michigan and Florida? North Carolina. We don't know anybody there, but hey, let's go there. So went there. Over a period of time, bought 60 acres of land that had nothing on it, and we built our own house, and we built a log cabin. And so I helped build that house, and it was literally, we would cut a tree down, pull it with our VW bus with the chain, bring it to the site, we would peel the bark off, we treated it with like this, it's called Varsol, like some variant of kerosene or something like that on it to kill the bugs. Put it up, we would put the nails in kind of up and down and put the like cement mixture.
Chinking?
Mm-hmm. And so I did all that. I helped put the roof on. So.
And how old were you?
So 4th grade.
Okay.
4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade.
Okay.
So I lived there. So we didn't have any electricity.
Wow.
No running water. So there's lots of stories around that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I lived there until I went to college. So 4th grade until I left to go to college when I was 17. So that was a long time. So there's all kinds of funny, crazy stories of things that we did in that log cabin. So it took us a long time to build it. Mm-hmm. So for a while we were living in the VW bus parked outside of this kind of place where we were building it. Then eventually we got the roof on, but there was no floor. So we lived in there with no floor. Eventually got a floor in, but it was always kind of different stages of being done. I don't even think it ever really was done, mm-hmm. right? But crazy things that we'd have to do to just get water. So water was down a huge hill, and we had this spring that was down there, and it was good drinking water, but we'd have to get water from there and take it back up just to take a shower, right, or take a bath.
And how many buckets would you need?
A lot. So we would do crazy things with like these crappy little cars we had. We would put these big buckets in there and then drive them up the hill. Right, there's this really steep hill that we had, and it was just amazing how hard basic stuff was. Right, staying warm. I remember just being cold a lot because we had a wood burning stove that wasn't always, working. It was always working, but it wasn't always warm, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the wood was wet, right, and things like that. So I remember a story of being so cold that I was like on top of the stove trying to get dressed for school, and I hit my leg on the stove. But because the outside was so, like where I was so cold, I didn't notice that I had gotten burned. So I go to school, and I'm like, it hurts. But I wasn't really thinking. I went to the bathroom, pulled my pants down. My skin, all the skin on my leg came off with my pants because it was so burned.
Right.
And so there's just like crazy things like that. I'm like, oh my God, it was just hard to be. It was just hard to have basic stuff. But then there's so many funny stories too, or things.
And while you were growing up, were you happy, or did you feel weird, or did you feel resentful?
It was such a mixed feeling, right? Like there were so many things I was happy about. Like the thing that's cool, I always kind of said, underlying all of this, is that I always knew that my parents loved me. You know what I mean? Like I always knew that. It was 100% clear. There was no question of that. So there was never any abuse. There was never, that I felt. I didn't even know at the time that there could be something different probably, but that was such a good thing, right, to have that. But there were also things that were just so hard. And, like, I look back and, like, think now with my own kids, I'm like, oh, my God. Like, I didn't know when I was going to be able to take a shower, like how we get water to take a shower. And I'm trying to be captain of the cheerleading squad. You know, like I was all establishment and my parents were all anti-establishment. So it was crazy the stuff that we did. I had just funny stories of things that I would do. Like I had a butane curling iron. I don't know if you ever saw one of those before.
But a butane?
Butane. Because I didn't have electricity, right? But it was so important to curl my hair.
Of course it was.
So I had this crazy, I knew how to fill up the thing with a butane filler, fill it up, and then like how to make it work with the flint.
Yeah.
To be able to curl my hair. Just funny stories like that.
Did you make the cheerleading squad?
Oh, yeah. It was great. I was so establishment. I was straight A's, every single sport, captain of the cheerleading squad. And the like prototypical establishment stuff, as that's sort of how I rebelled against my parents. I mean, crazy things that they had no rules. Like they didn't really care if I even went to school. And so for me to make straight A's is like, oh, okay, if you want to do that, I guess you can. You know, that kind of stuff. No curfew, so I made up my own curfew. Just really funny.
Now, how did they make a living?
Not very well.
Well,
so my mom,
they had to have bought land.
Right.
That took money.
my mom was a school teacher.
Okay.
And so she was the one who made money. And so
she taught school?
She taught school. So there's just so many levels of stories here.
That's
We
okay.
lived
We'll get the basic and then we'll go into, don't worry about it.
We lived way in the 60 acres. We lived way in all these hills. And so when weather was bad, we'd get stuck all the time. So there's so many times when my mom was late to get to work. I was late for school. We're stuck on a hill. My brother would be jumping on the front of the hood. I'd be flooring it. My mom would be pushing it, or some combination of that, right? My mom.
2 kids in the family?
2 kids, yeah. I
Okay.
have a brother who's 2 years younger than me. So anyway, we would have all these crazy stories of just trying to get out, like just to get out of this place so she could get to work. So she taught gifted and talented for a lot of her career, and then ended up more middle school. My dad was the one who didn't keep a job, and so he was a carpenter. So that's why
Well, that's
we were able.
nice.
Yeah, that's helpful when you're building a house, right?
Yes.
And really good at it, but he just never could keep a job. And in my head, I don't know if this is kind of after the fact, post hoc kind of rationalization, but that's why I think I was so interested in work, is because I just never understood why he hated his jobs and he would quit. He'd be in 2 weeks and quit, 2 weeks and quit. And it was always the man, it was always the manager, the boss, right, who was doing something to him. It was never him, right? But I really attributed a lot of our suffering to him not keeping a job. And my parents ended up divorcing when I was like 12.
Okay.
And there was a lot of fighting between the two of them.
And where'd you go?
So we stayed. My mom, can you believe this? My dad left, and my
Okay.
mom stayed.
Wow.
And so we stayed in this house and tried to make it work because we didn't have any money. I mean, she was a school teacher, and I think she was making so little money.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And could just pay the cost of the land and the car payment, right? And that's like
No mortgage. There was no mortgage.
No,
Well, that's...
right. The land cost, had a payment every month, but yeah. So there's just so many funny things. There's at one of the stories also, we had this TV that would work for 1 hour because it was hooked to the car battery, right?
Oh my gosh.
So I learned when I was really young how to pop clutch, and because we lived on this hill, so when the battery when the TV would start running low, the car battery would be gone, and so I'd go down and I'd just pop the clutch on the car and then let it run for a while, and then eventually I could watch a little bit more TV. One channel that was picked up, all like bad reception, but just funny things that I learned how to do. I read, like that's one of the really good things about this whole situation was I read and read and read and read. That's all I really could do, right? And so I think that was a really cool thing, is how much I got to read. And so I would put an inner tube. We had a river down in kind of our front area, and so I'd get an inner tube and tie a rope to it, and so it would tie to a tree, and I'd sit in an inner tube and just read my books. And would do that for hours and hours and hours because there wasn't anything else to do. So just crazy.
What kind of food would you eat?
So my parents were I spent a lot of my life as a vegetarian,
Mm-hmm.
and so they were a lot more into organic things, except when they completely weren't, right? Like
Right.
so.
Right.
So that was the general rule, is that we were eating organically and vegetarian, and then we'd be like really low on money. I remember one time like counting pennies, and I got a big bag of corn chips for dinner, right? Like I had 99 cents or something like that, and that's what we had for dinner because we had so little money in that. So I guess technically that's vegetarian, but
Technically.
not that healthy, you know?
No.
Like we had a lot of, just didn't have a lot of money, so we were doing a lot of that kind of eating, which wasn't great.
So what happened to your dad? Did you?
So my parents are both still alive.
Okay.
And so my mom got remarried. My dad got married, but then it was just short. But he still is in that mindset. So he lives on a little piece. We've sold all of that land.
Mm-hmm.
He lives on a little piece of that land that was left in a house with no electricity. Kind of in a pretty hoarder type of atmosphere.
Okay.
But he's happy.
Do you get to see him often?
Well, a couple times a year. I'd
Okay.
say. Yeah,
Well,
not
that's
too
better
bad.
than nothing.
Yeah, that's not
And
too
your
bad.
mom, where does she live?
She lives in North Carolina in the same basic town. She remarried somebody. She married somebody who is like the opposite of my father, like completely predictable, stable, right? Never does anything crazy ever. But she's also happy and doing well and likes her life, you know? So that's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. What is your brother doing?
So my brother is so interesting in this kind of mix of me being...
I love the fact that you specialized in organizational psychology. Kind of like I became an occupational therapist because I needed to see what was practical and functional because my family was wonderful, but they were crazy and dysfunctional.
Right, exactly. I
Yeah.
know. I really think there's something there. So my brother, if I was really establishment, my brother was anti-establishment. So he
Okay.
was the kid with the mohawk, that's in high school. Just artist, a great musician, amazing painter. And so he struggled though a lot. I think he had a really hard teenage time. For a lot of different reasons, but I think he is in a place now. He struggled to kind of find his way, but then he went to college and he got a master's in fine arts from George Washington. But then
Beautiful.
amazing. But then ended up not being able to be employed, like find a job in that. And so, he's been married. Is this really his third marriage? Luckily, this third one is the keeper, and he's been with her for a while. And she had 2 boys, and they had another boy and a little girl. And so now he's mostly a stay-at-home dad.
Good.
And loves it. And he always wanted to have kids, and his previous marriages they didn't want to, and so he is really happy having all these kids and really cool. So he's good. Yeah. Yeah. I talk a lot and talk fast, don't I?
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, because once we start with the books, they all just start coming.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you're an organizational psychologist, and now you're with this wonderful company on well-being, and then your own history.
Yeah, I know. It's cool because what we here are trying to do all the time is trying to create places where people feel like they want to come there every day, that they feel a sense that their employer cares about them, that
Right.
they don't feel the stuff that my dad felt. And so it's funny, the stuff from my dad and then the stuff at Microsoft, like that, all of that stuff, that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to move away from. Like, how can
Right.
we help the world think differently about work?
Right. So that's an interesting thing, is how do you do it here?
Yeah. So that's funny because I have 2 roles here. And one of them is I head up the human resources function. I'm the chief people officer. So we call it the people team. And then the other function is I head up this group called Limeade Institute. And so we do research on the topics of well-being and engagement. And that's because that's kind of my specialty.
Okay.
But I especially felt really strongly that I needed to have both of those functions, because if we're going and studying all this stuff and telling all our customers, wagging our fingers at them about how they're supposed to be, if we're not doing that stuff ourselves, then shame on us, right? There's
Right.
a lack of integrity to that. So I really wanted to have both of those functions to make sure that we're doing those things internally. So we work really hard every day around trying to get this place to be a place where people feel like they can do their best work, where they want to come. And there's a ton of, really great things that happen here and really positive vibe, and I love it. There's also a ton of stuff we still got to work on,
Well, because people are people.
Exactly. They're pretty complicated.
They're very complicated. They're very
layers.
complicated. I mean, it's this was definitely my heart and soul, and it keeps teaching me a lot, because in order for it to grow, I'm going to have to share,
Yep.
and I have to designate and delegate,
Yes.
and it's getting to be that point, but not quite yet, because if I don't go through the pain, the tension, companies, whether it's one person or 20, can be built on stuff that's just fluff
Yeah.
and not necessary. I walked the Camino 3 times. It's a spiritual
Oh, I
pilgrimage.
know. I've heard of that.
Yeah, so I did that
Oh, gosh.
3 times and volunteered. And what's really interesting is what's really necessary. I think that's a huge component for well-being.
Yes. Completely.
Because what is it that we really need?
Yeah.
Do we need a full closet? Do we need $1 million home, which is quite easy around this area? And so all these things come into play when I do this. It's like, no. Like your book easily can be incorporated with a business and your personal life. I'm working with a woman in North Carolina, Wilmington, who I met in Brooklyn in October, because we had both done Gen Chem coaching. And her business is texting is risky business. And it's all about, she does speaking engagements, but, it's like, well, let's do your book and let's help you answer the questions why people have to give up their iPhone, especially while they're driving, or their smartphone, because it's all addictive technology.
Yeah, right. Completely. And so unsatisfied, like deeply unsatisfying.
Well, it is, but we're already there. The imprint is already
Oh, I know.
there.
It's crazy.
And I'll tell her, I'll say, Tasha, I'm trying this on myself. And she goes, well, you have to go cold turkey and take all your apps off your phone, especially your email. And it's like, okay, I'm not there yet.
I know.
I'm just not there yet. Coming from a German background, it's like how efficient and effective can it be. I have to pull back and just breathe.
Right.
Because then you can see the bigger picture, the fuller picture. What are your kids like?
Awesome. So my son.
Are you married to the same person?
Yes.
Okay.
I am. My husband's name is Keith. I know we've been married almost 21 years. So that's kind of cool.
That's great. I couldn't. Yeah.
We went to graduate school. I met him in graduate school, and we started dating kind of towards the end of graduate school. So that's cool. My son is 18. His name is Griffin, and he's at the University of Arizona for his first year at college. And he's hilarious, really outgoing, social, just sort of happy in his life kind of person, right? Just kind of, he cracks me up because he is rollerblading everywhere. He's a really good skater. He's played hockey his whole life. And so at school, he rollerblades. He's known for the kid that rollerblades everywhere, which just, for some reason, just makes me giggle because he never did that here, but he really couldn't. We live on a gravel road and stuff like that. But he is just full of energy and really positive. My daughter, Skylar, is 14, almost 15, and she's in 9th grade, and she is a female version of my husband, which is hilarious to see. She's super smart, really focused, very clear what she stands for, what she's about. Also big into sports. Both of my kids play a lot of sports. Just hilarious, really lots of a really good sense of humor. Again, I could use all those words sort of describe my husband, which is kind of funny. They're just amazing. Great kids.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then, before you know it, they're out of the home. And you're in another phase.
I'm close to that, right? It's 3 more years until I'm assuming she'll go to college.
The 20s are such iffy years, You as a mother, it's hard to really relinquish control until you see what they're going down in terms of a career path and how
Yes.
it's working.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3 girls.
Oh my gosh.
So Katie is going to be 35 in April, and she made management at Boeing in communication.
Wow.
So we've gotten to the point where she doesn't, tell me what her thoughts are with writing, because it's like I'm doing a completely different thing. And I've gotten to the point where I don't need her opinion.
Right.
So that's good. And then Amy went to UBC and was an opera singer. But she being, Katie and Samantha are very logical and focused. And Amy was my artist. So she's taken a very circuitous route. It was competitive at UBC, and she didn't pursue opera. She went traveling around the world. She was engaged, but then she met a man in Australia, had an affair. He was a sound engineer. And he came over here, but he was older than her, so he's like 48 years old, and he was nuts. Charming human being, but probably bipolar without medication, and an alcoholic. So anyway, they got pregnant last summer, and I applaud her decision to have the baby. And Greg, we were, about a month ago, they turned him away at immigration in September because he worked under the table for cash. And my other daughter is married to an Australian, and Andrew said, don't do that. Well, he did it, and I think it must be the universe's way of keeping him out there. Because their last conversation, which was 6 weeks ago, was Amy said, you're not drinking because you have problems and you're mean, and the baby's going to have my name because you never married me. And then his parents called trying to bully Amy. It's like, what parents?
Parents at 48.
Yeah. So anyway, he's still in Sydney, and I gave her a shower on Saturday, and I'm just so proud of her to say I'm a single mom, because she wants the very best.
Yes.
So I know she's going to work in her singing. I know it's all going to be fine, Everybody was worried about her because, everybody else is making tons of money, and they all think she's going to fold and they're going to have to support her. And because Chris is coding, for a company at Pioneer Square, and Amy, and they have, money and, all that stuff. And it's like, guys, she's 31 years old,
Yeah.
Let's give her some space to really grow
Yeah.
and be. So I think everybody's come along. My first husband was shaking his head, and I said, well, I did divorce you when Sam was 4 years, and we've all managed.
Yeah.
And then Samantha, my youngest, she's an account executive at Amazon. She's married to Andrew, who worked on a banana plantation when he was 16 years old. They met in Australia, and he fell in love with her, and he came over here. And of course, did the green card thing the right way. So he worked in Canada, never has a college degree, but is such a successful, positive human being. Wow. So he's finally down here with her, and they're gonna buy a home and get their Australian sheepdog, and then maybe consider, it's everybody has their own place. And for Amy, it was always hardest because she's always walked to the tune of her own person. Yeah. And I tell her, honey, I hate to tell you, but you're light years ahead of Katie and Samantha, because you're going after your heart and soul.
Yeah.
And yes, you'll have to work and put the baby in daycare, and you'll have to figure out your singing, but that's your passion.
Yeah, right.
And that's why we have to tell these stories, because what does success mean?
Yeah.
Happiness is fleeting.
Completely.
But that's different than your own sense of worth and satisfaction. Mm-hmm. With Jen Kem, she's an amazing woman in San Francisco, and she does all sorts of marketing with large corporations, charges them huge chunks of money, and then smaller entrepreneurs. And I've outgrown her because you have to make choices, right? Do I write my books or do I think that I'm not worthy enough? Because there's always a catch-22 in how you do business.
Yes.
And I've gotten to the point where, you know what? I'm crossing my T's, dotting my I's, getting the books out, and just trust.
Yeah.
Because that's an organic, authentic, and then the people will come in and support. But, you know, when we were in Arizona last April, I said, yes, I want storytelling throughout the world and being able to print it. So these sizes, because if you get any more, well, you can have this size, but any more than that, people aren't engaged.
Yeah,
And
it's too much.
Well, and you see it all over the place. People are promoting their books. I've written this, I've written this, I've written this.
Yeah.
Great books, but you have to promote.
Yeah.
And if you get a traditional publisher, they're wanting you to go on the book circuit.
Yeah.
And so I have a friend who, his grandmother from Ireland had been a keener for people when there was a funeral. They would pay
Yes.
women to moan.
Wow.
And Bill made all his money in the .2, you know, phase, whenever that was in the 90s. And he owns SquareStack, which is marketing and helping you market. And he finally got his book out. It took 2 years, and now he's promoting it. But that's the gist of it. You have to do public speaking to sell your book.
For sure.
And that's not bad. It's just, what is it that you want to do? And how do you want to tell your story and get it out there?
I know. So I don't know if Maddie told you that I have to
You have to leave, so you have to keep track, or I'll keep track.
I think we've got about 5 more minutes or
Good.
so. You know, when you were saying about the work, like I'm curious, maybe I'll think a little bit about that idea.
Well, you take that one.
Oh,
I
good.
have one more left, and I'm revising it. So
Awesome.
it forces me to revise all these things.
Because I've always wanted to also do more of kind of like a work-related book.
Yeah.
Because I do a lot of talks and things like that on different topics.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there could be sort of this interwoven concept, like alternating chapters or something like that.
Yes.
Of things that, because I think so many of the things that I talk about now are related to things in my life.
I think so. We do. I mean, when I was in 6th grade, I wanted to record my grandparents because I knew they were dying. And back in those days, you know, a little tape recorder was expensive, so nobody was behind me except my grandmother, who had rheumatoid arthritis, and she said, Beth can handle the tape recorder. So I got a tape recorder. I don't know if I still have the tapes or not. I have this box of stuff I have to go through. But then she died the following year.
Oh my gosh.
And then when I was in high school, I interviewed my granddad on depression, and then his new wife, her mother, who had lived during World War II. And I had taken a journalism class, and, you know, the teacher said that was the best. So I always have wanted to record people and put their stories into books. But I was always told to be practical. So it was the occupational therapist, and then becoming a Feldenkrais practitioner. And then when I divorced Paul, it's like, well, if I don't have a husband, I need somebody giving me money. So it's going to be the pharmaceutical sales company. And all of those have made me do this.
Yeah, right, completely.
Because the forum ideally will be, you know, BethLord.com, her segment of that community, or it'll grow and expand to something else.
Yeah.
But the fact is these books will always be able to be ordered by Amazon. So the printed always goes to the person. You own the copy, right? I just ask to use bits and pieces because I don't, you know, that's too complicated for me.
Yeah.
And I think we could definitely interweave your stories because your well-beingness in terms of here was sparked by all of the extremes of your early life.
Completely. Me just caring about organizational psychology, right?
I love
think
it.
Came from my dad hating his work. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things like that. And there's other ones too. So what are next steps then? Are we going to have another conversation, or do I fill this out, or what are
let's do